to everyone that is watching. Welcome to the first episode of Avon Life Stories, as we're calling it preliminary. It might change. Our first guest, the beautiful Adam Porter. What?
Thank you very much.
No worries, mate. No worries. Yes, this is basically something that me and Will were just talking about. Will Mellish, that is, and just keep our spirits up until badminton can come back. So talking to some of the Avon players and just
Absolutely.
seeing their journey. So, Adam, let's start off with where it all kicked off. How did you get into badminton? Was there something specific that you liked about it? And yeah, just talk about your journey from a junior perspective.
Well, I think like most children, they pick up badminton through a family member. So my mum played for a local league. I've got two older brothers that also played.
Mm.
So I think that competitiveness against my
Sad
brothers.
to say, there's nothing like sibling rivalry, is there?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and there was two of them. They're twins. They're older than me, so yeah, it was a bit of a battle against them. So yeah, that's how I picked it up. I joined a club on a Sunday, which was
Yeah.
just a sort of a standard once a week play
Yeah.
for a couple of hours. Developed some friendships. I just really took to the sport, really liked it. But I was playing other sports at the time. I was doing cricket and basketball. So I was a bit of an all-rounder in terms of sports.
Mhm.
But I think badminton's the only sport that I kept going. Um, I didn't do anything other than just that once a week playing badminton. I didn't do any competitions. I didn't play any county juniors.
So
Um,
why was that? Was that just a conscious choice, or
I think
something else maybe?
two things. I think badminton is quite an expensive sport to play. I
Yeah.
think if you really want to develop, coaching's expensive, the shuttles are expensive, and there's a lot more other things involved, court hires, etc., and the equipment. So I think from just I think my mum couldn't afford to
Yeah.
to support me like that. So I was unfortunate in that sort of sense. But also I think I don't I've never experienced this with Avon, but Surrey's quite a cliquey county. Um, Wimbledon is quite a big setup
Right.
in terms of the development for badminton, and I was never at Wimbledon. I was playing at South Croydon Sports Club.
Yeah.
So I think that also um, did enable me to sort of get through the doors
Yeah.
as well. Yeah, so that's pretty much
Right. So
where it
so
was.
you're playing once a week, like you're getting decent skills, but maybe not the level that some other people are playing at. And then you moved to Bristol Uni at 18, and I guess went to the sports club there and continued playing there.
Yeah, well, just before I went to university, when I was 17, someone came up to me called Tracy. She was, I think, in the top five for England, female player, and she was she was very, very good, very skilled. And she came up to me one day. She was actually from our club, so she was Surrey born, and I think she realised that I couldn't afford much, and she said to me, Adam, do you want to come and do some training at the weekend? I was like in awe because this woman was such a role model for everybody at that club. Just her intensity, her skills, her technique, and the way that she would talk to you to try and help and give advice. It was very comforting, very positive. And so, yeah, at 17, I just had about 3 or 4 months with her. And I remember that very first session that I had with her, I couldn't breathe. I was absolutely knackered and literally only had 15 minutes on court. And I felt like I wanted to be sick. So I went outside and felt like I was going to vomit.
Mm.
I was white, I was just so pale. And she said to me, right, okay, let's go back. And I was like, what? Anyway, we went back on court. And since then, I had about 3 months worth of sessions with her and my skills developed incredibly
So
quickly.
she was a really big
Um,
part of your development
yes, she was definitely the start. It was good inspiration from her. And then going to Bristol University, I had the joys of Jeff Ball
then. Oh, wow.
and Thomas Farmer as well. I think he has played second team for Avon. and occasionally for the first team. Those two on the other side of the court, you know, I came there at 18, obviously not as skilled as them. They would more or less bully me on the other side of the court. Jeff would smash into my right hip, being a right-handed player,
most people, though,
as he does to most people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think having those people around me I was very fortunate to continue my development. We had a great coach as well at Bristol University called Edis Kakin, I think. He's still in Bristol at the moment. But yeah, he was very big on footwork, very dedicated, very committed. We used to go to the studio rooms at the Bristol University to do fitness work in front of a mirror. So all this kind of stuff really, really helped in my development. And I wasn't the most confident player back then. I always felt the underdog. I didn't know anybody. I still hadn't played a single tournament when I was 18.
Wow.
And I remember asking.
Go on. I was just going to say, like, you talked about, you know, your development at 17 with Tracy. Like, prior to that, did you believe that you could, like, sort of play badminton at a high level, or did you just see it as like that sort of Sunday mornings or evening?
No, I'd probably say it wasn't until I was about 19 when I realised actually I'm not too bad at badminton. Yeah. I'm not too bad. I'm asking Jeff to play a tournament, and Jeff unfortunately turned me down. But part of the reasons was that he had another badminton partner. So, you know, it was a little bit uncomfortable trying to change partners. So I completely understood that. But I also felt it was down to my ability as well, because Jeff was a really high standard. I think at one point, you know, he was top 15 in singles. He may have been higher than that, you know. So, but it gave me a bit more determination to do better. Sure. So yeah, it wasn't until I was about 19 that I played my first ever tournament. Wow. No one knew who I was.
How did you get on in that tournament?
My first tournament. It's going back quite some time now. I don't imagine we did that well. Maybe we got through a couple of rounds. Okay. But it wasn't too long after that actually we were getting sort of semi-finals. Nice. With such a new sort of partnership. And then, yeah, we became quite a committed partnership and things went up and got better.
So you're at Bristol Uni, and obviously you never played county as a junior. So how did playing for Avon come about? Like, talk me through, like, sort of, you know, the first contact and, you know, first matches and stuff like that. Just the very start of your Avon sort of career.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember who got in touch, because
so it was someone getting in touch with you.
Yes. So obviously playing at Bristol University, Avon have quite a good relationship with both, you know, I'm not so much sure about UWE at the time, but definitely Bristol and Bath. Those universities, Pete Bush used to sort of direct players as well as us coach. Edis was heavily involved with Avon, and then Paul, can't remember his surname. Paul Tomlinson took over while we were there. I think that was in my second or third year. So yeah, there was lots of directions from them, but Kelly Clements and Liam Clements, their parents, especially Mum, I think, was quite involved with badminton. Yeah. And I think that was the manager of the second team when I first joined. So I don't know how exactly it came about, but I was invited to, you know, to play for them. I never played a county restricted prior to that. So it was nice to get invited. It was very hard playing in the seconds. The matches were very, very strong.
Can you remember those first matches, like partners or playing against at all?
Yeah, so I remember men's doubles. I can't remember who. I think it used to change quite a bit on who we used to play with, but definitely in the mixed doubles, I was playing with Kelly Clements most of the time, and actually we did a few tournaments as well with each other, which again helped my development. I think Kelly may have been in the England setup as a junior. So yeah, there was plenty of skills, that she had that I could observe, and she would talk through match tactics, what to do, how to serve, where to go, what to expect, from a shot. So yeah, the very first few matches were incredibly tough. It was a big sort of change to what I'm usually playing against, because I play club players.
Yeah.
And I think going to county or on a sort of a national scale, there's that ladder involved.
It's tough adapting to that step up, isn't it? Like, especially from club to county, it's a different story. How did you find that adapting? Although I know you said it was tough, but did you also enjoy it, or was it really you had to work quite hard to get to that point of doing it?
Yeah, I think there's ups and downs. I think what I say to any player, being a coach as well, is we do have to focus on our weaknesses, but we also have to focus, I feel, more on our strengths and really developing those strengths. Because if you have a skill that nobody else has, and it's better than anybody else, you need to exploit that. You need to use it. And I think the one thing that I've always been strong at is reading a game on the forecourt. I have the ability to try and understand people's patterns when they're hitting something. It can get me in a lot of trouble at the same time, especially when deception's involved. I could be, calling that taxi to go, because I'm going the other way.
Yeah.
But when it works extremely well. And I think it's trying to develop that partnership as well. Your doubles men's partner, for example, playing with Jeff, he knew what I would be going to do in terms of intercepting a shot. So he would always heavily cover something else, knowing what I was going to do. So yeah,
having that relationship with the partner, I guess, must be so important. So you're in the seconds for roughly how long? Can you remember?
About a year and a half,
about
I think.
So then you got the call up. You got the same call up to the first team, to the Prem squad. How was that as a feeling?
I was so nervous. It was one of my most nervous experiences playing badminton. Yes, and I can remember the first weekend we had it was against Nottingham as one of the teams, and I couldn't believe who was on the other side, because as a badminton player, our idols are people like Nathan Robertson, Anthony Clark, these big players. At that time, they were the number one players when I was playing as a young adult. And literally the top four players, or top four men, were all playing at that moment for Nottingham. And there's me, a nobody, on the other side, thinking, I can get a point or two. We didn't get many, but it was a nice experience.
Yeah. So that first going up, obviously, is tricky. I mean, I wouldn't know, but going up to a Prem squad, I assume it's is it a whole different environment from the second team, or is it just you just know how the standard of players is just going to be at that elite level?
Yeah, I do think the standard now is definitely weaker than it was back then. I'd refer to them as the elite players, those national full-time players who compete internationally. They were all playing the Premiership League, and this is something that's rather disappointing now. And I think it's something that Badminton England should really think about, how they could utilise those players again, whether it's some sort of contract, because I think, having those players represent that kind of league could only support having a wider community of badminton players, because they are our role models. And if they're not representing, who then do we look for? Because unfortunately in the media, it's not on TV as much as we would like. We're trying to find the links on the internet to try and see the international competitions. It's not easy. So I'd say nowadays those characters or those players aren't representing anymore. So I'd say the standard has dropped. It's still an incredibly high standard, but it would be that tad higher if they were to sort of play. But yeah, it is a change between the second team and the first team, because I think at that time we were in sort of the Division 1, and when I first played for the first team, it was Premiership B, so it wasn't even Prem A.
Right.
But I'd say Prem A and Prem B, there are elite players in both those leagues because it's representing a county. But yeah, you've really got to have a strong mindset. You've got to want to win. The mentality of a game is so much. It's so important.
In fact, is it still 2 days back then? Was it still a weekend thing back then?
Yes.
So
it's always been 2 days.
How is it tricky keeping that level of like focus, drive, like for both days, especially like on the second day, you must be so tired after the first, and having that energy. Must be hard.
Yeah, I think on the Saturday we don't necessarily play lots of games because I think we're restricted to playing 2 games per team. But it's a long day of badminton. You arrive there, I think, at 11 o'clock, and you don't leave the hall until about 7, 8 o'clock in the evening. So come the Sunday, you get there at 10 o'clock in the morning. You can tell that I'd probably say the standard is slightly less on a Sunday. However, the last weekend is always different because it determines whether who goes up or who goes down. So, and also there's that social aspect, which is something that I really love about Avon. And on a Saturday night we would go out. Some would drink a little bit more than others. Some would have to control the party a little bit.
They shall remain nameless.
Yes, they certainly will. Yeah. So obviously having a night out does impact how you would perform the next day. But you can definitely tell the teams that were in sort of potential relegation, if they didn't go out, you could see the performance would still be of a high standard. So I think to every county in Prem, it does mean a lot. I think everybody generally does want to stay in Prem because the standard is so good. So yeah, it's a tiring weekend. It's nice to go home. And of an age that I am now, I'm a little bit sore for the next few days. So yeah, it takes its toll a little bit now.
Right. So from the first, you said you played against these Nottingham players who were unbelievable. So that was the start of what was a glitzy, glamorous Prem career for you. How many is it? 14 years? Am I right in saying that?
Oh Jesus! Hang on.
Since Nathan I have from Will Mellis, so holding the count.
Yes, 14 years.
14 years. But that 14 years. Sorry, it's a nice thing. It's a nice thing. So 14 years playing at Premiership level. How do you maintain that level, being a constant in that squad for so long? Like, how do you manage to keep it going?
Avon's one of the. I don't know. I can't speak for other counties, but Avon has a good structure in terms of development, and there's always been a couple of standout players, especially for Premiership standards, that have been put in. And I've had very fortunate positions to play with the likes of Chris Coles, who was a professional player until the age of 25, 26. That's that kind of age. So I had a whole season playing with Chris Coles. I think one season we actually didn't drop a game playing first men's. But he's the kind of player that you want to be around, because regardless of your level and experience, he sees you as an equal. And that's what's nice on court, because obviously when you've got those elite players that are a standard above you, you do feel like you've got to represent, and you can't let them down. So, but sometimes I think when you've got that in your mind, you end up making more mistakes because you're putting too much pressure on you. But Chris would give you those comforting words to sort of relax you and say, it's okay to make a mistake.
Hmm.
Just get on with the next point. Stop focusing on what's happening or what has happened. And also, I've had the likes of having a season with Jess Hopton as well. Again, someone who's played for badminton in England, representing the country, playing international competitions. There is a lot of pressure, and you don't want to let them down. But it's quite a phenomenal experience because their tactical awareness on court is more advanced. So you develop things through them. So even though I might be the older player, I'm still willing to adapt and learn from those younger players that have or have a bit more experience at playing at that higher level.
How important would you say is that? You know, like you say, like you're learning from other players, not just for yourself, but you say you're a coach now as well. Like for any player, like learning and adapting, um, you know, to other people's games and to other people's tactics and stuff. Like, how important do you think that is?
I think it's quite a vital thing, and I think a lot of times as a coach now, and I'm quite fortunate that there's I coach 2 or 3 England junior players that have come from my development, but it's not just from my development because I always say to them, there are other coaches out there that will give you something different than what I can give you.
Mm.
So you're like a sponge, absorb what you can. And I had the best piece of advice from someone and said, look, have as many coaches as you can. They'll tell you to do it a certain way, but you've got to work out what works best for you. But learn from each coach. Then you decide which way works best for you and you go from there. So I think that's something that I'm very mindful when I'm playing with other players. They might not be coaching me, but I'm fully aware of what they can and can't do and what I can and can't do and how we need to work together to make it better as a team. So yeah, and also I think being a qualified coach, I think we often coach ourselves. So we're always for me personally, I'm always thinking, well, what can I do better? I do know my limits, and I'm often like, well, actually, I have to be realistic as well, and sort of say, you know what, I can't beat these 2 players on the other side of the court as much as I would love to. I'll give it my best shot, but I'm not going to be unrealistic and say, you know what, I can beat them to 0. It's not going to happen. Yeah. So yeah, I think being realistic and just sort of just listening to people around you, and I think what's good about the Avon teams, I think in general, and I could probably speak for the other teams as well, is that there's such a bond with the team. There's that friendship.
Yeah.
And they give advice off court, on court. You know, you could talk about things, you know, in the evenings. You know, there's that sort of sense of everyone wants to help each other. And I think that's why I've stayed for so long with Avon. And it's funny because I remember going to university and coming back to Surrey. Obviously, I won't mention names. And there was one individual that said, oh, you know, would you come back? And I'm like, well, no, because you've never asked me to play for Surrey. I've never been sort of looked at as a junior.
Yeah.
And now that I'm getting somewhere with badminton, now you want me? And it's just like, I just felt used rather than being part of a family. And I think that's what's kept me at Avon, is that it is such a family. And yeah, we have a great time. And that's what I love about it.
Avon's like, I mean, not so much a mantra, but I totally agree with you. It feels like we're all in it, like everyone's in it together, especially at matches.
Absolutely.
Like, it's such a team. Like, it's like we play it as a team and not like a group of individuals. I think at matches, and I think, as you say, that's so important. Like from, you know, whether you're Premiership or, you know, down to Team 6 that we have now and juniors everywhere. I think it's fantastic. But just moving on then. So, I mean, Will Mesh tells me that you've had numerous nail-biting ties over your years, lots of relegation scares that you've managed to scrap out of, etc., etc.
Yes.
Are there any particular seasons or matches in particular that really stick out in your mind as well? That was an unbelievable match. I can't believe we won that, or, you know, something along those lines.
Yeah, I think we've had a few. Yeah, I think, you know, every season, I think Avon, you know, because I've played in the Premiership, I can only really talk about the Premiership, but we've had numerous scares, and I think Avon is a county that's always the underdog. You know, we don't have these superstars, you know, like other counties. So every point counts, every match counts, and I think, as I said just a moment ago, if it wasn't for the team, we wouldn't have the matches that we've had, or the points. I remember one season, I think we were in relegation zone on the last weekend. It was coming into the Sunday, and I think we were playing against Middlesex, and Middlesex were the top team in that league. They were number one, so it was looking so doubtful. And I think, I can't remember, but it was like we needed to get 7-4 or something like that. And we went and done it. And it was the most rewarding experience, that the fact that, you know, we beat the top team in the league. They hadn't dropped the game against anybody else, and we've gone and done it the last weekend. But I think if it wasn't for that support, the shouting that goes behind, because a lot of people think that badminton is not really a team game because it's either singles or there's one other person on your side of the court. But it's those people that are off court that really bring the team together. So yeah, that was the sort of the nail biting sort of relegation. Are we going to go back down to Prem B? You know, and I think there's certain players that are in the team that you just don't want to go down to Prem B for their sakes. I think Chris Coles was playing at the time. Jess was there. You know, it's just that little standard down. As much as they may have been more than happy to play it, you just don't want to put them in that situation. So kind of that makes me fight a little bit more.
Oh, brilliant. So I'm looking at, I mean, you talked about like playing across from your idol earlier and stuff. Like looking, like just interested really. Are you watching are you interested in the world circuit at the moment?
To be honest, I don't follow it so much nowadays. I'd probably say in the last few years it's sort of dwindled.
Well, I was just going to ask, like, are there any, you know, obviously you're specializing in doubles. Are there any partnerships or individual players that you look out to in the England circuit or international circuit where you just looking like, you think, what an inspiration, or I'd really like to learn that game, that player?
I think I've always been, I mean, they're retired now, but Bo and Morganson as a men's doubles pair, you know, just how Bo played on the forecourt, because as I said, like, I feel like my strength is more on the forecourt, and it's just watching him and how he reads a game and sort of intercepts, and, you know, everything is decisive in what he does. And you can tell that there's that huge bond between them, because Morganson as a rear player is so effective.
Brilliant.
So for those two, in terms of doubles, I used to love watching them. I was always supportive of the England players as well. It was nice, you know, going back with Nathan and Anthony playing together. Even Chris Adcock with Andy Ellis, you know, at the time.
I forgot those two.
Yeah, I mean, they were a really decent pair, you know, and I think, you know, I was watching one match and they beat Bo and Morganson, so they had this, but I don't think Badminton England do enough to develop the right disciplines that we're good at, and I don't know if that's because physically we are not that way inclined. You know, they're very heavily focused, especially in the junior setup, you know, on singles. Which would be amazing to have a singles pair. But looking at history and statistics, we've always done better in the doubles disciplines, whether it's, you know, men's, ladies, or mixed. So I think they could really invest in that a little bit more. And I think I've read a recent article about, you know, the fact that they've just been reinstated some funding. And I think Sean Vendy and Ben Lane are doing very well recently. Especially getting to the semi-finals. Yeah, so I think they are looking to invest in a little bit more in that sort of doubles discipline, having done so well, and I think that's quite a sensible thing to do. And also, we don't really have the space here. If we look at courts for singles, you know, it takes up a lot of room. and we don't have these multi-complexes where, you know, it's badminton only, you know, and you've got plenty of time. So, and also clubs, you know, it's mainly doubles, isn't it? When we play for a club, it's always a doubles league or a mixed league.
It is, yeah.
So I think this is something that we should focus more on.
So looking forward, I mean, hopefully, you know, we can get back to badminton soon. Obviously,
Retire.
we well, we still don't know exactly when. But do you like to set yourself personal targets, personal goals in terms of badminton or fitness, or do you just, you know, you just sort of like to take it one step at a time in terms of your progress?
Yeah, I think I'm taking it one step at a time. I think I know that I'm getting older. I don't know what I am now, 33, I think now. I'll be 34 this year. Still playing at Prem. You know, I've always said to myself is that once an Avon player can sort of beat me, and there are players out there that can definitely beat me, then I would definitely look to sort of step down and represent the seconds and thirds. But I'm more than happy to play until that sort of time comes, or if my body tells me, you know what, you can't hack it anymore, stop because your arm hurts or your body hurts. But also, you know, it goes also what I said earlier again about being a team and a family, you know, with Avon, is that we talk to each other and, you know, we'll say, you're not good enough or you shouldn't play this discipline. And it's not them being rude, it's just them being realistic. And I think
Yeah.
you've just got to accept it. So yeah, I would love to play badminton as long as I can. I do know a 93-year-old that still plays badminton. So I'd like to be, I'd like to be playing badminton at that age. The legs might not work, but
Is he a Prem player?
no, it's this elderly lady. But it's just amazing just to see someone on court at that age that still gives the shuttle a good whack, you know, and has that enjoyment. So yeah, I'd like to play badminton as long as I can.
Well,
But yeah,
that is a really lovely ending little sequence, I think.
yes.
Adam,
Well,
thank
thank
you
you.
very oh, my pleasure. Thank you very much for joining me today. We've got episodes with Dan Bethel and Jeff Hopton coming soon. So
Yeah, that'd be
stay
great.
tuned for that. Oh, that'll be unbelievable. I mean, we've got what a free first guest, by the way. Dan Bethel and Jeff Hopton. What a trio. But yeah, that will be it. Adam, thank you again for joining me, and we'll see you
No
next
problem.
time.
Yep. Take care.